The U.S. had meticulously prepared for the prisoner rescue operation, from personnel selection to strategic deployment. Everything was precisely timed to the second. However, just a few hours before the operation was to commence, they received unexpected news that all the prisoners had been moved. How would the U.S. respond to this information? Would they continue the assault or call it off? Just hours before the operation, U.S. generals were shocked and reluctant to believe that their prisoners had been completely relocated. An urgent meeting was convened that night to determine the accuracy of the news and decide whether to proceed with the attack or to abort the mission. First, it is essential to assess the reliability of the recently received information. This intelligence was analyzed by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency from a letter found in cigarette packs sent by Nguyen Van Hoang to Alfred. However, the question remains whether this information can be trusted and how U.S. intelligence can verify its authenticity. Alfred is a member of the International Commission for Supervision and Control, an organization established following the signing of a treaty. Its role is to intervene in conflicts with a message of reconciliation, essentially saying, "Come on, stop fighting. Let's settle this peacefully." Due to their intermediary position, members of this organization can sometimes be extremely effective spies. At times, they may spy for Vietnam, other times for the US, and occasionally for both sides. At the time, Alfred was an extremely cunning individual who had been bribed by the US with the objective of extracting information about American prisoners in Vietnam. Alfred formed a mutually beneficial relationship with Nguyen Van Hoang, proposing a deal. "I give you this classified information, and in return, you provide me with other secrets for us to exchange." However, Alfred cleverly tested Hoang's trust in him, knowing well that in the world of espionage, obtaining information is one thing. Verifying its accuracy and understanding the motives behind its disclosure is another matter entirely. Alfred always provided Hoang with highly sought-after information, such as fabricating a story about an American colonel who, in a drunken state, inadvertently revealed plans for a major attack at a specific location and time, information that would indeed coincide with a U.S. military operation. Naturally, these were merely pawns set before the actual battle. U.S. intelligence also closely monitored whether Vietnam was actively preparing weapons for an attack, or if their troop deployments were merely coincidental. If Vietnam thoroughly prepared for the anticipated attack, it would indicate that Hoang had placed great trust in the information Alfred provided. At that point, Hoang would realize that Alfred was a reliable source and would feel compelled to reciprocate by sharing valuable information that Alfred needed. During their last meeting before returning to his home country, Alfred confided in Hoang that he was close to a significant promotion if he could solve the remaining issue concerning American prisoners. Solving this would not only assure his advancement but also mean that the information Fred provided to Hoang would become increasingly valuable. The more valuable the information Hoang possessed, the higher his standing would become. Con artists always strike on the 101st move, and Alfred was such a person. The previous 100 times he provided information, it was always accurate and crucial. Hoang believed in Alfred's potential promotion and informed him that the American prisoners had long been moved from the Son Tai camp. Trusting the information from Hoang, Alfred immediately relayed this to the American generals to strategize accordingly. Hours before the planned strike, the American generals were extremely anxious. An extraordinary meeting took place on the night of November 19th at the White House, and the chaos of information left the generals bewildered. Intelligence reported that the Son Tai camp was empty of prisoners, yet infrared surveillance still detected people inside the prison. With no clear way to discern the truth from the false, they resorted to a gamble, voting among everyone in the meeting room to proceed with the attack. Consequently, everything unfolded exactly as originally planned. Perhaps the prisoners at Son Tai camp would have been overjoyed, having long awaited this day. They were allowed to go outside, talk freely among themselves, but they never communicated in English. All communication was carried out using tap code, where a single sentence took several minutes to convey, yet it was exceedingly secure. Before being transferred there, the prisoners were put into a windowless van, completely blindfolded, and transported over bumpy roads, making it impossible for them to discern their destination. This intense curiosity about their location drove them to seek any means to understand their surroundings and communicate this to the outside for rescue. They exploited every opportunity to peer beyond the prison walls, sometimes under the guise of hanging nets in the volleyball court, or pretending to hoist each other to retrieve shoes thrown onto roofs, all in an effort to glimpse their surroundings. Particularly, when some prisoners knowledgeable about electricity were called to repair electrical issues for the guards. They maximized their observation time. Each prisoner was assigned a direction to watch, and they later pooled their observations to form a comprehensive picture of the prison layout. Ready to transmit this information when the opportunity arose. At precisely 23:18, the last helicopter departed from Udon Air Base in Thailand, headed for Son Tai. The Americans had meticulously trained for the operation, arriving at the prison at 02:17, a full 30 seconds ahead of schedule. This timing was calculated to coincide with the changing of the guard, catching them off guard and unprepared. An AC-130 was tasked with dropping flares to illuminate the path and blind the guards temporarily. Following this, helicopters would land in the yard, allowing soldiers to rush in and break through the doors to liberate the pilots. All crew members had been instructed to leave all non-essential equipment behind to lighten the aircraft, prioritizing the evacuation of the rescued prisoners. Overall, the operation proceeded with few errors, except for one aircraft that mistakenly flew 400 meters off course to a nearby school and a helicopter that suffered a broken rotor blade, resulting in injuries to 2 American soldiers. Upon arriving at the site, the soldiers called out to their comrades using loudspeakers, but strangely, no one responded. Using flashlights to inspect each room, they discovered only 6 shirtless men sleeping, who turned out to be guards assigned to watch over the prison after the prisoners had been transferred, not the American pilots they were expecting to find. At that moment, the US generals realized that the operation was a complete failure, and the embarrassment was compounded by the loss of an expensive helicopter worth millions of dollars. This loss was particularly galling, as it came after a soldier had suggested using the cheaper UH-1 helicopters, priced at $350,000 each, instead of the $1,000 HH-3 helicopters, arguing it was wasteful to use such expensive equipment for the raid. His suggestion was harshly dismissed by the command, who prioritized the best equipment over cost, arguing that the life of a pilot was worth the expense. However, this decision turned out to be a costly mistake, serving as a harsh lesson for the commanders. After the unsuccessful raid, the US generals convened to review their mistakes. They believed they had been diligent in surveilling the Son Tai prison, using both regular and infrared photography, and still observed people inside. Unfortunately, the infrared imaging could not distinguish between Vietnamese and Americans. They were desperate for accurate information, but dared not increase aerial reconnaissance for fear of exposing their plans. They even considered having someone approach the prison gate on a bicycle, pretending to have a breakdown to peek inside. But this plan was impractical. If the cyclist was American, it would be too conspicuous, and if Vietnamese, the US soldiers would not trust the reliability of the information, thereby risking the exposure of their plans. Thus, they were left without a feasible way to gather the necessary intelligence about the prison. On that day, despite using infrared imaging, the US reconnaissance aircraft still spotted people inside the prison. This was because ever since the incident with the Siaposing as a Red Cross visitor, they had become aware of America's intentions. Along with this, intelligence reports confirmed everything matched up. Consequently, they prepared their undercover troops to intercept the planned raid. It was these undercover troops that deceived the US surveillance aircraft into believing their prisoners were still being held at Son Tai. So, why did we transfer the prisoners before the American raid? Part of the explanation lies in Vietnam's discovery of the CIA infiltrator posing as a Red Cross worker, combined with intelligence reports. However, there was another reason. CIA artificial rain campaign had flooded the prison, with the river water rising dangerously close to the prison walls, making logistics extremely difficult. The prison infrastructure was old and crumbling, exacerbating the situation. Therefore, Vietnam decided to relocate the prisoners. The question arises, did the top brass of the raid not know about the Po Pi campaign? CIA campaign of artificial rain? The answer is no. It was an extremely secretive operation directed by CIA, known to only a few. The CIA wanted to utilize these artificial rain campaigns to disrupt supply lines and the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They used chemicals containing silver and lead to create cold clouds, inducing rain even during the North's winter monsoon. In 1970, the US concentrated efforts to induce rainfall in North Vietnam. That year, the precipitation was so intense that even the world's leading meteorologists could not explain why such a drastic variation in rainfall occurred from one year to the next. According to records left by an American general, the amount of rain that fell over North Vietnam in the 2 months leading up to the planned raid was equivalent to the total rainfall of the previous 5 years. This likely necessitated the relocation of prisoners from the Sun Tai prison, which incidentally thwarted the U.S. plans to rescue them. The Sun Tai raid clearly demonstrated that not all organizational systems are flawless. The self-defeating outcome of this operation significantly embarrassed Nixon in front of the entire United States. Unbeknownst to him that the CIA's rainmaking was a principal cause of the raid's failure. This incident also showcased the adeptness of Vietnamese intelligence in understanding the intricacies of the operation, akin to having insider knowledge at the highest levels of the US government, like President Nixon or his high-level security advisor, Kissinger. That concludes our historical discussion for today. Thank you for your interest and for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe to the channel Legends of History